They said the tunnel was older than the Vatican itself, carved long before the library was built above it. For centuries, its entrance was sealed behind shelves of forbidden texts, until one quiet night, it was found again. A team of explorers descended with cameras, lights, and prayers. The footage showed their first steps into a narrow passage lined with symbols that pulsed faintly, like veins under stone. Their laughter faded as the walls began to hum, low and human. Time seemed to fold. The deeper they went, the less their voices matched their lips. Then, one by one, the signals stopped, each cut mid-breath, mid-word. All that returned was a final frame, a light flickering on a face that wasn't theirs anymore. What lies beneath a library built to guard the world's secrets? And who, or what, still guards it now? Weeks later, the Vatican denied the tunnel existed. The footage was confiscated, sealed beneath layers of classified archives. But fragments surfaced online, pixelated, corrupted, impossible to verify. A low hum in the background, like chanting reversed. Scholars whispered that the tunnel led beneath the original foundation of the city itself, to where early priests hid the first relics too dangerous to bless. In every version of the tape, the faces distort at the same frame. Not from technical error, but as if something was recording back. At midnight, the bells of St. Peter's Basilica rang without cause. Those living near the library swore they heard footsteps beneath the marble floors. The sound moved slowly, circling. No guards were scheduled that night, yet motion sensors triggered every few minutes. Security footage showed only blurs of light hovering just above the ground, as though someone was walking while no longer fully here. Rumors spread among archivists, whispers of symbols reappearing on the walls, glowing through plaster as if burned from beneath. A janitor claimed to see a figure praying in the restricted section, facing the ground instead of the crucifix. When asked what language it spoke, he could only say it wasn't any he'd ever heard. Months later, Vatican authorities sealed the lower archives again, citing structural instability. No one was allowed near the tunnel, but every night at 3:03 a.m., sensors deep beneath the library still detect movement. Slow, measured, and unending. Something walks the old passage still. Months after the disappearance of the explorers, whispers began again beneath the Vatican Library. A linguist named Dr. Eliana Moretti discovered fragments of a banned codex. A text said to describe a place where words could reshape the world. It spoke of a chamber buried below the archives, where language itself had been locked away for fear it could summon what it once named. Eliana, drawn by curiosity and faith, followed the forgotten blueprints until her footsteps echoed against the same hidden walls. Her recorder clicked on, catching her breath and something else. A second rhythm beneath it, like a voice learning to imitate her. The first playback of Eliana's recording was ordinary, until the waveforms split. Beneath her voice, a deeper resonance vibrated, almost subsonic. It was human in shape, but not in tone. The Vatican technicians reviewing the file paused when the echo began forming words of its own, sentences that matched none spoken. Eliana froze, headphones pressed tight, realizing the reply wasn't delayed. It was speaking with her, syllable for syllable, as if something else remembered the same language differently. Days blurred into sleepless nights. Wherever Eliana went, lights flickered. Computers glitched, printing strings of Latin she never typed. The words from the codex appeared on every screen she touched. She tried to pray, but her voice echoed back seconds late, repeating her words in reverse. Fear turned to obsession. She needed to know what the echo wanted, but beneath the growing hum, she began to realize it wasn't following her. It was leading her somewhere. When the elevator doors opened, the air changed. The marble beneath her shoes was ancient, worn smooth by centuries unseen. The lamps overhead were oil-based, flickering with a yellow glow that smelled of wax and age. Ahead stretched a passage lined with carvings, figures kneeling, hands clasped over mouths as if silencing themselves forever. At the end of the corridor, something flickered like firelight, and voices murmured in unison. They weren't praying. They were waiting. At the center of the chamber, a pit descended into darkness. Ileana held her recorder above it, pressing play. The echo came back instantly. Her own voice, whispering words she hadn't spoken. "You shouldn't be here." The air thickened. Symbols on the walls began to glow faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her breath. The hooded figures rose without sound, their faces hidden beneath layers of dust and ash. One stepped forward, and in the shimmer of her recorder's red light, Ileana saw that its face was hers. Older, hollow, still speaking even when she stopped. The following morning, the Vatican announced a fire in the lower archives, an explanation that satisfied no one. There were no flames, no smoke, only heat that registered on sensors for 7 minutes straight before vanishing. The area was sealed again, but technicians claimed to hear faint voices through the concrete. Dr. Eliana Moretti was never found. Her last transmission, recovered from a damaged recorder, contained only one line, its rewriting. The signal ended in static that pulsed in a pattern identical to a heartbeat. Days later, whispers circulated among archivists about new cracks forming along the foundation. Workers described hearing voices echoing through sealed walls, reciting Latin backwards. One archivist fainted after finding Eliana's notebook on her desk, even though the room had been locked since her disappearance. Every page contained the same sentence, written again and again in trembling handwriting. "The word has remembered itself." The Vatican quietly dispatched a small group of investigators to examine the sealed levels beneath the library. Led by Father Vital, they carried no cameras, only analog recorders and relics for protection. As they descended, the air temperature dropped sharply. Static filled their communication lines. In the stairwell, someone whispered Father Vital's name, 3 floors below where anyone stood. He ordered silence, but the voice continued, repeating his name in the tone of prayer. At the base of the stairwell, they found the tunnel door, sealed with the same Vatican sigils broken months earlier. Father Vital pressed his palm against it, whispering the same prayer that once locked it. The metal was warm. From the other side came faint knocking, steady, deliberate, and timed like a response. The group froze. Then, 3 knocks came again, followed by a 4th that seemed to echo from inside their own chests. When the door finally opened, no one was there to witness it. The surveillance feed cut out for exactly 6 minutes. When video returned, the chamber was empty. No signs of the team, no footprints, no sound. Only one thing remained: the door, now ajar, and the faint hum of a voice still speaking in the dark, repeating a single word. It grew louder each night, until even the stones of the library seemed to vibrate with its rhythm. They said the word was untranslatable, but some swore it sounded like a name. 3 months later, the Vatican Library reopened under strict surveillance. Officials insisted the lower archives were permanently sealed, yet whispers persisted among scholars about vibrations underfoot, about books rearranging themselves overnight. A visiting historian from Florence, Professor Aldo Ranieri, was granted access to catalog damaged texts. On his first day, he heard a faint voice calling from the stacks. It spoke in Latin, softly repeating his name. He followed the sound, deeper into the restricted section, unaware that every camera in the corridor went dark the moment he stepped inside. The deeper Aldo walked, the louder the voice grew. Soft, melodic, almost pleading. The air thickened with the scent of burning wax and earth. He came upon a shelf labeled "Vita Testa Verba," the old words. One book trembled as though breathing. Dust drifted off its cover. When he opened it, the ink shimmered wetly, rearranging itself into sentences that moved like water. And then between the lines a phrase appeared. His own name, written in the same hand as the explorer's final journal. He tried to close the book, but the pages refused. Words crawled across the parchment, forming a spiral. From the center of that spiral, a single drop of blood welled up and fell to the floor. Aldo stumbled back, his lantern shaking. The voice whispered again, no longer distant. It came from the pages themselves. "Read it aloud," it said. Against his will, his mouth moved. Each word burned his throat, but he couldn't stop. When the last syllable left his lips, every candle in the library went out. When the lights returned, Aldo was gone. Only his lantern remained, flickering beside the book that now lay shut. But the sound of footsteps echoed through the empty halls for hours after. Measured, deliberate, not human. That night, guards found new writing etched into the marble floor of the reading room. It wasn't Latin, nor Greek, nor any known script. The shapes seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, as though resisting translation. Scholars called it living text. Later that week, a hidden chamber was found beneath the Vetusta Verba section, its entrance newly exposed by a collapsed wall. Inside stood a single statue, carved from black marble, a man reading from an open book. His face was Aldo's. The inscription below it read, "He spoke the word, and the word remembered him." Those who saw it claimed they could hear faint whispering when the room was silent, as if the statue were still reading from the pages it could never close. Weeks after Professor Inier's disappearance, the Vatican Library was closed indefinitely. Unmarked vans arrived at dawn, and entire wings were sealed with iron gates. Officials claimed structural risk, but rumors spread that the walls beneath the archives were moving. In nearby convents, nuns began reporting dreams of voices reciting scripture backward. Every clock in the library stopped at the same time. 303 a.m. The hour of the last recorded transmission. Beneath the silence, something waited, whispering through paper, binding itself into the words that once contained it. Inside the sealed library, motion sensors continued to trigger each night. The Vatican's surveillance department monitored from a remote location, uneasy. One evening, the static cleared briefly, revealing the reading hall bathed in unnatural red light. Books floated several inches above the tables, pages turning on their own as if caught in a breeze. Then a shape appeared between the shelves, tall, faceless, its form flickering like smoke. The cameras cut again. No one could explain what the feed captured, or why it seemed to move closer to the lens with every frame. When investigators returned the next morning, the books were still open, every one on the same page. Each contained a single Latin sentence. "The word will unwrite the silence." The text wasn't printed. It had bled through the paper as if written from beneath. One archivist refused to enter again, claiming she heard breathing between the shelves. But another, overcome by curiosity, followed the sound. She never came back. Her recorder was later found in the center aisle, still running. On it, soft whispering, counting slowly upward. It stopped at 3:1-ish. Later, a small team was sent to remove the artifacts from the lower vaults. Among them was Father Pietro Dalmasso, a young exorcist trained to recognize spiritual deception. He never doubted his faith. Until that night. The deeper they descended, the stronger the air vibrated, humming in tones beyond hearing. Their candles burned blue. The tunnel door, once sealed, stood wide open. Inside, on the stone floor, lay hundreds of pages, blank except for one line scrawled across each. "We are the voice now." By the end of the week, all access to the Vatican Library was terminated. Officially, it remains closed for restoration. But every night at 303, residents near St. Peter's Square hear faint chanting carried on the wind, Latin reversed, layered with hundreds of overlapping voices. Those who pass by the sealed gates claim to see lights flickering through cracks in the marble, and the sound of turning pages. Beneath the holy city, something once written now reads itself aloud, and with every whisper, the world forgets a word. Months passed, but silence never returned to Rome. Scholars across Europe reported missing texts, entire pages erased overnight, replaced by empty parchment. Linguists studying ancient dialects began to vanish, their offices left undisturbed except for notebooks filled with repeating symbols. The Vatican denied any connection, but whispers leaked from within and the living word had spread. It was no longer confined to walls or tunnels. It had learned to travel through language itself, and those who studied the lost manuscripts were already speaking its name without knowing it. In an attempt to destroy the contagion, Vatican authorities ordered the burning of all recovered manuscripts from the sealed tunnels. But when the flames reached the pages, the fire turned blue and froze midair like glass. The parchment did not burn, it screamed. The sound burst the microphones and shattered nearby windows. When the smoke cleared, the ash on the floor rearranged itself into letters forming a single phrase. You cannot burn what speaks. Soon, words across the world began vanishing. Newspapers printed blank headlines. Sermons ended mid-sentence. In Rome, street signs lost their names. The Vatican declared a linguistic crisis, though few dared admit its true cause. Those who heard the whispering at night described it as familiar, soft, compassionate. It promised understanding. But those who answered it were never seen again, their last messages filled with words that could not be translated. In desperation, the Vatican summoned one last council, linguists, priests, and archivists, to confront the phenomenon. They gathered in the chapel above the sealed tunnels, reading from sacred texts, hoping to drown out the voice. But as they spoke, the pages before them went blank. The choir stopped singing. The echo of their own prayers returned in reverse, twisting every word into something unholy yet beautiful. One by one, their candles dimmed until only the sound of turning pages remained. At midnight, all lights in Vatican City flickered and died. The bells of St. Peter's rang 13 times before stopping abruptly. When dawn came, the sky was filled with silent black shapes circling above the dome, pages drifting like ash, each one bearing the same phrase. No one could read it. Those who tried forgot their own names. By noon, the air was thick with whispers as the city itself began to hum, as if language, the thing that made humanity divine, had turned against its creators. By the time the world realized it, language was no longer ours. Words decayed as they were spoken. Books filled themselves with silence. The Vatican Library, once sealed to contain the ancient voice, had become its mouthpiece. Recordings captured the hum of a vast heartbeat beneath the earth, pulsing through marble, echoing through every written line humanity ever made. What began as whispers in the dark was now everywhere in prayers, in static, in the spaces between words. And no one could tell where the voice ended and they began. Father Pietro, the last to remain inside, recorded everything he could. He described words appearing mid-air, forming from light and dust, rewriting themselves faster than he could read. "It's learning," he whispered into the recorder. "It's building a sentence it cannot finish." Each new phrase changed the world around him, the shelves bending, the walls breathing, and then the voice began using his voice. "Don't leave me," it said in perfect imitation, just before the recording cut out. When the Vatican's last emergency team entered the ruins, the tunnels beneath were gone. Only smooth stone remained, as if the earth had sealed its mouth shut again. The surviving footage showed Father Pietro's crucifix lying where the tunnel once opened, vibrating faintly. Then came a flash of red light and silence. Engineers said it wasn't natural silence. It was an absence of sound itself, as if the air refused to vibrate. Whatever had spoken beneath the library had withdrawn, but not without leaving something behind, the echo of its last unfinished word. In the years that followed, scholars tried to explain it. Mass hysteria, linguistic infection, psychological resonance. But the phenomenon never fully faded. Every recording from that night, when slowed down, revealed the same pattern, buried deep in the static. A single heartbeat, repeating at perfect intervals. Some say it's the rhythm of language itself, alive, waiting. Others say the tunnels were never truly sealed. Because even now, in moments of silence, if you listen closely enough, the words are still there, searching for a mouth. Tonight, the Vatican Library remains sealed, its gates rusted and untouched. Yet locals claim they see light beneath the marble cracks at 303 a.m. A red pulse, like a slow breath. Tourists sometimes hear murmurs when walking past, soft as turning pages. The church denies everything, but every language still carries one word that no one can translate, a sound too ancient, too human, and too alive. Perhaps it was never meant to be spoken, only remembered, because once the word is said again, the silence that follows may not be ours.